Hello and welcome to 21st Century. I'm Daljit Dhaliwal. In 1994, Rwanda was home to one of the worst genocides ever witnessed. In a reign of terror lasting some 100 days, an estimated 800,000 minority Tutsis and moderate Hutus were slaughtered at the hands of Hutu militias. More than a decade later, Rwanda is slowly recovering after so much bloodshed, village by village, city by city, stitching itself together again. As the mist rises above the lush rolling hills of Rwanda, life goes on as usual. Villagers tend to their land in the quiet of mountaintops. Markets bustle in the city centres below. But these everyday images belie a horrific past. A past that saw a genocide unleashed overnight. Hutu militias yielding machetes, spears and knives took to the streets, hunting and killing minority Tutsis and moderate Hutus at a staggering pace. When the bloodshed ended some 100 days later, an estimated 800,000 people had been killed. 3 out of every 4 Tutsis lay dead. This is the story of one survivor, 29-year-old Anonsieta Nirategekimana. It's also the story of Rwanda today, wrestling with the past, coping with a devastating illness, and struggling to forgive the unforgivable.
This is where it used to be, our home.
Anonsieta's story began one June morning in 1994 in a small village in the middle of the country.
We were sitting in the living room and we saw them through the window. They were ordinary people wearing banana leaves and carrying weapons like spears and clubs.
They were Hutu militia and they quickly descended on her village. Anonsieta fled only to be caught by Hutu militia and raped day and night, held captive for 3 weeks. And she's only one of an estimated 250,000 women raped at the hands of these militiamen.
Those who were raped like me were actually injured, for we've been violated by so many people. My back was almost broken.
Anonsieta was only 16 years old and she was alone, seeking refuge for 3 months until she was finally reunited with her mother. Of a family of 9, only the 2 survived. She learned that her father was drowned and the identity of one of the men involved was soon revealed. He was her neighbor.
That man was one of the best friends of my family. They're the kind of people we would have run to for safety when the genocide started.
He and more than 120,000 other suspects were crowded into jails around the country to await trial. While he was detained, Anonsieta discovered she had already received a sentence of her own. She, like some 70% of rape survivors, was now sick, infected with HIV. Senator Odette Nyura-Milimo.
About 1/4 of women who were raped died the 5 first years because they were not treated and it was very difficult for them to live.
Thanks to the efforts of the Rwandan government and national survivor organizations, treatment is becoming increasingly available for many infected female survivors, including Anonsieta. But more than a decade later, survivors still struggle with the legacy of the past. And still, await justice. By 2001, Rwanda had tried only a little more than 5% of the more than 100,000 suspects still in detention. With too few courts, prosecuting them all would take more than a century. And so in 2001, the government turned to its communities to help deliver justice using a system shaped by centuries-old tradition. It's called gacaca, a village-level court system. On the grass, under the shade of trees, perpetrators come face to face with their neighbors and confess their crimes.
We are really creating space where people can speak out.
Fatuma Ndongiza, Executive Secretary of Rwanda's National Unity and Reconciliation Commission.
The bitterness they have, the stories of what they went through as a basis of healing, educating people to be accountable and responsible for their deeds.
Respected villagers chosen by their community serve as judges. After detailing their crimes in front of their neighbors, perpetrators are most often forgiven. Many expected to help their people by rebuilding much of what was destroyed and are sent home. It's reconciliation like this, officials say, that's the only hope of uniting Rwanda.
There's no other option. We have to live together. You don't have a country for a victim, a country for a perpetrator. It's a question of survival if we want to move on.
But moving on was something that Annoncietta wasn't sure she could do. When in July 2007, the man that helped kill her father, her former neighbor, Jean-Marie Vianney, stood in front of their village court after more than a decade in jail awaiting trial.
He pleaded guilty and confessed before Gacaca court, asked for forgiveness to all Rwandans and to me in particular.
The community's judgment, permission to return to his village. He and Annoncietta were once again to live as neighbors. But they were both left to wonder, can you ever really recover from the wounds of the past?
This is where all of us came to shop. Sometimes a little girl named Annoncietta used to come and take over for her dad. We were like brothers and sisters.
A fact that didn't stop him when the militia came to their village and found Annoncietta's father.
My responsibility is that they forced me to go with them, and I agreed, and I never tried to do anything to save him from being thrown into the river.
After such cruelty, could he ever be accepted back into his village?
The people welcomed me back, and now, even those I have betrayed, we are living well together.
You know they're talking about reconciliation these days. Those who killed my relatives, all of them have been released. They confessed, and I have forgiven them.
Annoncietta says she desperately hopes that forgiveness will help her and Rwanda rise from the ashes and overcome the memories that remain.
Today, we live side by side in peace, but in my heart, I will never forget what I've done to him, as he himself, wherever he goes, whatever he does, will always remember.
Some 12,000 gacaca courts have been established throughout Rwanda, and hundreds of thousands of perpetrators have been forgiven by their victims.